Welcome to this special English edition of the vlog. In this episode I'm gonna switch from my regular Icelandic to English because I think the topic of today is actually gonna have an appeal to a broader audience than my usual local ramblings. So what I'm gonna be doing is a product review of this beast, the M3 Plus 38-inch electric longboard from TEEMO Board. This is not a sponsored video. Continue. Alright, before we actually dive into the specs and all the details about this beauty, I just wanted to mention one thing. On the teemoboard.com website where I ordered this recently, they offer a variety of different models, and I was a little bit confused. So I was a little bit confused about what to actually select and buy. They have the M1, the M2, the M3, the M3 Plus, the M4 and the upgraded 38-inch, and this alongside all the kind of specialty off-road boards, kit boards, cruiser board, all these different things they have. All these M models fall into kind of the same price category, and they have statistics or specifications that I didn't find easy to actually compare. But I went with my gut and ordered the M3 Plus. So, onto the actual specs themselves. The M3 Plus is a 38-inch electric longboard, which means that the deck itself is about 96 centimeters long, 38 inches, close to a meter. The entire thing is propelled by two brushless hub motors that reside in those back wheels. Each motor outputs 250 watts of power, giving us a total output of 500 across the board. These are controlled by an ESC, which is a kind of a motherboard control unit that resides in this back compartment here. The ESC and the actual motors in the back wheels are then fed energy from a battery compartment here in the front. Now, TEEMO has 4 different battery options for the M3 Plus. These options have varying output or charge characteristics. I opted for the second highest option, which is the Panasonic 6.4 ampere-hour battery, which, according to specifications, is supposed to give me 21 to 24 kilometers of range, or between 13 and 15 miles if you like the imperial system. And we'll see if that actually holds up given my weight. Another claim according to the specifications is that these motors can propel the board up to 38 kilometers an hour, almost 40 kilometers an hour. That's quite insane. And in addition to that, it's supposed to, according to spec, supposed to be able to climb hills up to 30 degrees, but I think 30 degrees is quite steep, so I'm wondering if they actually meant to say 30% inclination, which is somewhere close to 17 degrees, I think. Either way, quite impressive, but I'm also going to be interested to see if it can really carry my weight up those hills. Now, the deck itself has this nice concave form, planting your feet quite securely and easily on it. It's made from 8 layers of Canadian maple, which is very flexible, which is really important to give the board the suspension that you need to be able to ride it over rough surfaces and generally just contribute to a very smooth ride. I think these characteristics are quite important given the fact that the rear wheels with the hub motors are relatively stiff, so they don't give any level of suspension. So all that is really provided by the board itself, and I must say that it feels quite nice and quite smooth to actually ride. It carves quite nicely and feels like you're actually riding a snowboard through soft snow. Now, the front wheels are these 92mm monsters that completely dwarf the otherwise very comfortable wheels on my penny nickel board and just make a complete joke out of the smaller wheels on my daughter's penny style cruiser. So the whole package, board with batteries, hub motors, trucks, everything, weighs in at around 10 kilos, which is a quite respectable weight to lug around. But one thing you can definitely be sure of is that carrying this stuff, you are gonna look cooler than anybody else. If you run out of batteries, if you just want to get some exercise, or yeah, you lost your remote, I don't know, you can still of course push this thing as a regular longboard. There's little to no resistance that I can see or feel in the hub motors themselves, so it's relatively easy to push. Just keep in mind that it's 10 kilos, so that's actually gonna contribute a little bit to how easy or difficult it is to push it. Now, as with other electric skateboards, the TEEMO is controlled by a wireless handheld remote. You turn on your board, turn on your remote, and they pair quickly and quite smoothly. The remote has indicators for the battery level of the remote itself, indicator for the connection to the actual board, and power indicators for the charge level of the board itself. That comes in 4 dots, which can be full or blinking, giving you, I think, up to 8 steps of indicators there. It additionally has the ability to switch between 3 gear modes, which is beginner, intermediate and pro. You can use a recessed switch to switch between front and back, so you can have forward and reverse motion. And of course, most importantly, you have the acceleration wheel or the trigger wheel. Pushing the wheel forward will accelerate the board. Pushing it backwards will decelerate or activate the brakes. I found that the acceleration wheel needs a little bit of time to get used to. It's quite sensitive, but at the same time, I think it really has a nice kind of tactile feel to it. There's a nice springy resistance when you push it. So after a couple of hours of using this, it's quite easy to get that fine level of control that you actually want from the acceleration wheel. No problem there. So the difference between those 3 modes, speed modes, 1, 2 and 3, beginner, intermediate and pro, are not just the maximum speed you can get, but also the amount of acceleration and deceleration you get. Deceleration from the brakes, obviously, when you hit the wheel. So I think beginner is aptly named. It's quite easy, steady, gradual and everything, and get you going and get you kind of accustomed to how this works. Intermediate is fantastic for just cruising around. Gives you, I think, a comfortable max speed, some smooth acceleration and deceleration. And pro again is truly pro. So I think this beast really kicks when you put it into pro and you hammer down the accelerator. It really gets you going. So you need to be prepared for that. Before going actually into my review of how it feels to ride this thing, it's best, I think, to give you a little indication of my experience. I have no real experience working with or using skateboards, and absolutely no experience using electric skateboards. So you're not going to get any comparison from me against other brands out there on the market. This is the only one I've tried, and I can only give you my experience and my feeling with riding this particular board. In general, how difficult is it to, I won't say master this, but how difficult is it to be able to ride this without falling over? I've had like a few weeks of experience riding on my penny nickel board. Had a toy board back in the 80s that I played with for a few months. And I did a little bit of snowboarding about 20 years ago, so that's really the extent of my experience. I found it quite easy to use. It's large, it's heavy and stable, it's easy to plant your feet on it, and it's easy to maintain balance as you cruise around. One thing that really surprised me about this, which probably holds true for all longboards and is probably no news to people that know longboards, is that you really control this more like a snowboard than what I would see you doing with a traditional skateboard. So it's much more about upper body motion and moving your hips and kind of sliding the back end of the board. Feels really nice. The kind of carving and cruising that you can do on this board feels very smooth in my mind. I have to admit that once I'd ordered this board and I was waiting for it in the mail, I had this creeping suspicion that I was gonna get disappointed. I was afraid that I would open the box and there would be kind of that feeling of getting a subpar product. But I have to say that I was very pleasantly surprised when I opened the box, and I kind of felt that this was, well, looked like a solidly built product. It seemed like all the components were well, again, well made, at least from the from what I can see. Everything seemed to be well put together, and there was this general feeling of kind of robustness. It was bigger and heavier and stronger and kind of more imposing than I dared to hope. So yeah, I really liked it. Again, why did I choose the TEEMO? Aside from some logistical things, like the fact that not every manufacturer of electric skateboards delivers to Iceland, which I think is a result of Icelandic import regulations with large lithium-ion batteries. The TEEMO actually had not many reviews out there, but all the reviews I found were quite favorable. It looked like, well, it's the cheapest board actually on the market, and when I say it's the cheapest board on the market, it's the lowest priced board on the market, because there's nothing that feels cheap about this as a product. But the kind of deciding factor in all of this was the weight allowance on the board. So I was looking at different board manufacturers, and most of these boards come with a maximum rider weight allowance of 100 kilos, which is my weight exactly. So I was a bit concerned that if I would put on a couple of kilos or would be wearing a backpack, I would potentially be damaging the board. The TEEMO, according to specifications, supports a rider up to 120 kilos, so I can ride the TEEMO and safely continue eating my cakes for quite some time. So my conclusion, I've ridden this now probably about 50 kilometers. The charge seems to hold up relatively well. I'm getting 18 kilometers per charge, which I think, given my weight, is actually quite decent, and I'm happy with that. Also, in terms of speed, I seem to be getting kind of 5/6 out of the maximum speed indicated. I haven't dared trying to go to the maximum speed on the Pro setting, which is 38 kilometers per hour. But I have maxed out in the intermediate, which has a max speed of 30 kilometers per hour. I max out at 25. And on the beginner, which has a listed max speed of 18 kilometers per hour, I max out at 15. So it's consistent, the 5/6 is consistent across the beginner and intermediate modes. So again, I'm quite happy with that. Additionally, I'm able to ride up quite steep hills, specifically when the battery is fully charged. There is some drop off in power when the battery starts to get depleted. I don't feel any significant change, let's say in the first 75% of the battery, but when I'm down to the last of the 4 pips of power, down to the last 25%, I start feeling some power dips, specifically in its ability to climb inclines. Not that big of a change actually on flat ground. I really like this. I really recommend this board to anyone who wants to try this. I'm pretty sure this is a very decent option for any beginner electric longboarder out there. If you have any questions, comments, want to know something else, hit me up in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed, and please like and subscribe. Thank you.